Sorry, we had a short technical program. Our next session is Civil Society and Tech. You know, my friends, we can't neglect it, or we can't say negative things. Digitalization brought enormous progress to our world, changed so much to the better. But nevertheless, in recent times, some of the companies who made this progress, who brought us digitalization, got a little bit into a new thinking or rethinking their role in society, their responsibility in society. You have heard about claims of violating copyright and data protection laws, of stifling competition, of influencing public opinion, are not mere news headlines. They are serious issues the company and we as society have to deal with. To discuss solutions, how this can be achieved, I can think of no one better than our next two DLD All Stars. Reid Hoffman, I'm chasing him on every conference, begging him, Reid, when are you coming back to DLD? You have to come. You are such a great influencer, such an important person. You really make the world a different place with your engagement, with your savvy insights, how the digitalization is changing our world. You played an immense role in this. And finally, I succeeded in having him in a virtual world. I hope I didn't bother you too much the recent years. Good, look at him. I'm so happy. So Reid Hoffman is partner at Greylock, as well as an acclaimed entrepreneur and an investor. You all have heard of little companies like PayPal and LinkedIn, and many more. Reid is a hero in the digital world. Currently, he also is host of the podcast series Master of Scale. Furthermore, he's very outspoken on societal and political issues. You have heard probably about his engagement for the Biden campaign. Thank you for this also, Reid. Thank you for the outcome. You have a part in it. And I really recommend to you all to follow his blog and to follow him on Twitter. You learn a lot. By the way, he also wrote several books on leadership. Also, this is if you're a parent, give your children this book as soon as they want to start a company or want to be part of a startup company. They should read it before because it's important. They learn. And we have to spread the word of Reid Hoffman. Reid, thank you for being again here. And the fantastic thing is that Reid will be joined by another hero of mine, June. June, I know you for many years. My first TED conference was, I think, 96 or 97 with Richard Saul Berman. What a character. I still adore him because he created, later with Chris Anderson, this amazing network of TED. But since a while, you left TED and you created an own company, a fantastic company. It's called Masters of Scale. And now you both will talk about what it needs for tech company to engage in civil societies. I'm proud that you both are here. I hope we will see us many times more, not only virtual, but in real time.
Thank you, Steffi.
Thank you so much, Steffi. You make me smile ear to ear. Reid, so delightful to have you here. Normally when we're together, you are interviewing someone else, so I'm pretty happy about getting to interview you for this fireside chat today.
Well, me too. Although obviously we have done this interview thing before on the Masters Scale, brought to you by WaitWhat, right? The company, and the Masters Scale is, obviously it's funny playing the talent.
Yes, that is our ongoing joke, that's your role on Masters of Scale. You're the talent. let me pick up where you left off, Steffi, with just a moment of introduction. Many of you watching know me from my many years at TED as executive producer and co-host, and for launching TED Talks. That is how I also came to know Reid Hoffman 4 years ago when I launched WaitWhat with my co-founder, Darren Triff. The very first thing we did was visit Reid to persuade him to join us in launching the podcast Masters of Scale with our mission of democratizing entrepreneurship. Happily, he said yes, which brings us to here. But Reid, I want to do two things before we start. First, just wanted to say that I think most people here listening know some aspects of your reputation. They know that you're a truly legendary Silicon Valley entrepreneur in launching and co-founding LinkedIn. They know that you're a legendary investor at Greylock, probably, I think with a well-deserved reputation of one of the most successful investors in Silicon Valley history, really. Also host of our show, Masters of Scale. But what they might not know is two things. I think what some people don't know is your reputation and deserved as one of the most sought after mentors and advisors in Silicon Valley. You have been called the Yoda of Silicon Valley. I have called you the Yoda of Silicon Valley. Heads of state, heads of companies, I'll come to you. Another thing people might not know about you is that you originally wanted to be a philosophy professor. At heart, you really are a public intellectual. And I think that's why you're also such a great match for the DLD audience. So I'm excited about this conversation today.
Me too.
Good. Reid, to start us off with our first question, just looking at it is a question of the moment, right? The role of technology in broader civil society. Barely a day goes by when you and I don't think about that multiple times and on multiple different levels. And I wanted to level set for our audience for a moment, just to draw the picture of kind of the three moments in both of our histories when we intersected with tech, because I think that sets the stage for this conversation. So Reid, you and I we didn't know each other in college. We were a few years apart, but we were both liberal arts majors who were drawn into tech, I think both because of the inventiveness in tech and the impact. This is in the 90s, the first .com boom. We thought of ourselves as rebels and inventors and leaders in search of impact. We were pioneers, right? That's how we fancied ourselves. You and I first crossed paths in the 2010s. This was the dawn of LinkedIn, the dawn of social networks, Creative Commons, TED Talks, Wikipedia, the Arab Spring. We were in a new era of tech optimism. Fast forward to 4 years ago, we launched Masters of Scale together in yet another chapter in tech optimism. But a lot has changed in those couple of decades and even in the last 4 years. And I'd really be curious, Reid, to just start on how you think of yourself as a tech leader now and how that may have changed in the last 5 years, in the last couple decades. Give me that context.
So it's a great question. I mean, I think, part of the reason why many of us, you and I, but probably a huge number of people in the audience got into tech is because of the belief of what tech can do. What tech can do positively, and it's scale. Like part of the reason is kind of like the Masters of Scale thing. It's scale leverage, and it can do all these things. It can change elements of life, elements of work, elements of how society comes together, and it's a little bit like a microcosm of the internet, which is kind of early internet. I think part of the thing that brought us both into tech was this notion of, well, wait, we can give voice to the unvoiced. We can discover new perspectives. We can communicate in ways we haven't before. We can discover information, education, and information can be connected anywhere in the world. And so, even a kid in a remote village in someplace, Africa, Indonesia, whatever, can actually, if they get connected, could be enabled and could begin to control their own destiny and learn stuff. And that excitement, that the desire for the internet was so fierce and such a we can transform humanity with this. And I think, by the way, that's broadly still the impulse of many of the folks in tech. But of course, once you begin to get to size, once you begin to get to scale, you bring all of society in, right? And I think my first reflection on that was at PayPal when, I was sitting around with some colleagues and we were reflecting well, look, if we have 200 million people here we have a certain percentage of criminals, certain percentage of murderers, certain percentage of they're all here too, right? And it isn't just the unvoiced or the folks who weren't able to find the education, the information, whatever, in order to advance themselves, but it's everybody. And as you begin to get to more and more of the utility, so we're all geeks here. So, the Star Wars, the Force that's binding us together, in terms of how this works. Once you begin to do that, then you begin to need to think like society. You can't just think like rebels. You can't just think like the pirates. You can't just think like, oh, I've got this new thing that'll be really disruptive. It's like, well, actually, in fact, we have to think about society and institutions and how things bound together. Now, I had always somewhat thought that way because, as you were mentioning, the philosophy background always had me thinking about the role of the individual versus society. And when I try to provoke people into thinking, I will describe myself in such ways as a pro-individual anti-libertarian, right? And people go, what's that? Right? And the whole idea is to think about look, individual is really important, and individual rights and individual expression of talent is part of what makes entrepreneurship. But we're also part of society, and we have to think about what is our role in society and what are the things that we're doing. And it's not just the role of individuals, not just the compact of individuals, but of social cohesion. Now, obviously, that's one of the reasons why social networking was one of the things that I, social net, my first company, even networks like PayPal, investing in things like Airbnb, obviously LinkedIn, because I think that way. Individual, it's in my first book, The Startup Review, which I think is what Steffi was referring to. I was going to pull out a copy and show it, and then I realized it was kind of too much of the proud author waving their book in front of the screen. But one of the things I have in that book is it's I to the we, right? It's you think of yourself as an individual, but the reason why we did Startup Review was that pun on you in English is both singular and plural, right? So it's kind of that. It's the combination of it that matters, and that's my kind of stepping through the arc. And obviously, I've been quite concerned. My biggest concern, actually, in all of the current techlash stuff, is that people go, "Ooh, tech's the problem." And look, it isn't that there aren't problems that come about from this shift to utility and they still "Ooh, wait a minute, what do we do in order to be good for society and so forth? And how do we learn that? And what are our ethics and responsibilities?" One of the things I think we'll be talking about this morning and evening. But it's tech also the solution, right? Propose your solutions in here's what we do to go tech forward, not tech backward, is the key thing that I keep kind of beating the drum on this, because your solution will only, I think, really work if you're tech forward.
So let's take that as a jumping off point, and thinking about how to be tech forward now that all of technology is operating at scale and at the scale of society. What does it mean to design technology products that include society as a customer, that kind of actively think of society as a whole, as a legitimate and important customer of the product? So
part of it is also a question of when you get to it. So in blitzscaling, we have a whole chapter on responsible blitzscaling because, we anticipated when we were doing the book that people would say, oh, you prioritize scale over everything else, so you don't care about what your collateral damage is. And obviously the answer is, look, you're ethical human beings, and being human first, like we frequently say on Masters of Scale, is no, of course you shouldn't do that. But on the other hand, of course, when you're in a garage, or the modern equivalent, sketching your idea in the back of a napkin, you're not even at the scale of individuals, let alone society. So the question is how you bring that thinking in. And you should start with some thinking about well, if we achieve everything we're thinking about, what would be the way that we would want to have an impact, not just on customers who love us, on a society that might love us, but on society overall? And how would that be positive? So you at least have a thought about it. Then as you're beginning to scale your business and you begin to become multi-threaded in an organization, you should begin to make it's someone's job to start thinking about society as a customer, and thinking about, by the way, not just upsides, which are great, but also downside risks, things you might need to evolve, so that person can go, hey, we should think about what happens if the following starts happening, and the following large scale negative impact on society might be there, and what we do about it. like what we would build in advance. You sometimes have foot faults, what we correct to, like how we can get there. And then part of the I think thinking about it is not just like tasking people in your company, in your journey as you're beginning to scale, as you're beginning to get to multi-threaded in your organization, but also communicate it. Because part of the thing I think is important, and part of how you begin to think about society as a customer, because you go, well, society is a customer. Is that what government tells you to do? Well, government is, I think, like they have the moral and legal mandate, but they're frequently incoherent. They frequently don't like tell you like in good ways. And for example, like you look at many democracies, most especially including the US in this, and you have two sides yelling at each other and they're yelling different things. You go, well, okay, what is government telling me about what society should be doing? I mean, I'll follow government, but like, what is that? But by the way, this is a challenge that's common to entrepreneurs. They say, oh, well, I should wait until government clears up its view and tells me. It's like, no. Look, we're always building for our future customer, and our future customer has a parallel to our current customers, a family resemblance. If we go back to philosophy and Derek Parfit and Reasons and Persons, they're a successor of the current customers, but it's always evolving and changing, and you have to be making those active judgments. And so you should be making an active judgment about what do you think society as a customer is. But part of how you correct yourself and you try to stay on target is you have that in conversation, in transparency, in talking about it. Like, this is who we are. This is what we're trying to do in society. This is what we're not. This is how we're modifying. This is how we're listening to constituencies. Like, for example, frequently customers tell you to do things. You go, no, actually, in fact, we're not going to do that because we don't think that's our mature customer. That's where we're going. All products have that all products have that. Even B2B and enterprise. This enterprise, you go, no, I understand you want that, but these are the enterprises that we're building these new features for. And so anyway, that's what you need to start doing. You don't do it from what we refer to as the family stage in blitzscaling in businesses, but you start doing it at like the village stage, and then you make that, and then as you grow, you make sure that your executive staff is all cohered on, look, obviously our customers, our members, and what they want is really good, but what also is the right play for society, and that has to be a first-class citizen.
Reid, that makes a lot of sense, and just in terms of totally grasp what you said about the scale of the company in which you start to think about this. It's more the village stage, when you have hundreds of people, when you're really starting to operate at scale. Let's come into this moment of time now, right? As Steffi mentioned before, you're a very outspoken and important player in the campaign against Trump and for Biden in this last election in the US. There are a lot of very important conversations happening right now about the role of technology and the role technology has played in perhaps exacerbating the sort of the lack of civility in the U.S. and the rise of extremism. There's an important question about the role that technology can play in helping to restore civility and preserving a functioning democracy. Talk to us a little bit about the role that you believe technology must play and can play in restoring civility and preserving a functional democracy. So
the macro challenge that I think we need to get to is, and you have to do this carefully, because when you say, hey, look, we should have the target goal. So I'll start with something that some people have very quick objections to, and I will get to the objections, which is, to have a healthy functioning society, especially democracy, you need to have a media that increases truth and knowledge over time. Doesn't mean every single thing that's said has to be truthful. Doesn't mean to say that you can't have big glaring errors that are corrected over time and so forth. But you need to have a media ecosystem that, like, broadly, like the group of folks and everyone who's participating in it get to more shared knowledge, get to more like, we by a subject of kind of group reasoning, we have gotten to more what philosophers call justified true belief, knowledge, and then kind of shared and common knowledge within that. Now, of course, the challenge when that's frequently articulated is that becomes a political weapon, And people say, things like, my facts, your facts, or my knowledge, your knowledge, or, my truth, your truth. And one of the things I think you need to be is say, no, we don't allow, kind of my truth, your truth. We sometimes only can get to our truth, and it's a work in progress. But how do you do that? And the short answer is we have mechanisms by which we do that. We have mechanisms by which we do it in science, which are, replicability and experiment and published papers. We have mechanisms where we would do it in like legal trials and commissions that study things. One of the challenges between, the accelerating modern media and truth is that truth is slow and media is getting faster. And so how do you get those impedance mismatches? And then also the question is, as you're figuring out, some truths are more easy, mathematical, 2 + 2 is 4. Some truths are less easy. So in a design of society, is this particular law or way that we get together, is that, for example, take one that I'm on the gun control side of the US, but there's this active debate about, what degree of gun control and so forth by large numbers of people within the US. And so, you can have some argument, discussion about that. And so you go, okay, so how do we do that? Well, the answer is we have to make sure that we are, I think a lot of truth is not allowing clear, massive disseminations of falsehoods. And how do you shift that? So, I think easy ones, when we get to within like kind of vaccination and so forth. Whoops, is that it? Right.
It's there.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt you, but I have a recipe to listen to you further on. Please, my dear audience, subscribe to Masters of Scale. It's so interesting. And what you just heard, you heard the conversation of two very humanistic individuals. I think in our tech world, in our digitalization world, we need to create a new form of humanists. And the two of you, June and Reid, you are the proto-example, either the perfect examples for this next humanists. Humanists 5.0, not 2.0, 5.7.0. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Steffi.
And make
Can I
sure
add one
that
thing?
Master of Scales is on your list, on your subscription list. It's really, you will profit of this conversation. It's amazing. Thank you.
All right, Steffi, I'll tell you just one thing before we go. One is we would love, Reid and I, to continue this conversation on tech humanism. So perhaps we find another way to do that with the DLD community.
And I just heard from my colleagues that you will be on Clubhouse, or the DLD Clubhouse show later on.
We will be joining you. I will for sure. Reid is going to try. And Steffi, the last thing I'll add is that we have agreed with you to make our Masters of Scale app, which comes out next month, available first to the DLD community at 50% off.
Super.
App for the entrepreneurial mindset. Steffi, is such a pleasure. Reid, so much more to say next time.
It's on friendship, and I'm proud for your friendship. Thank you.
Yes.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.